I'm never gonna get to throw the football with him again. I'm never gonna get to hear him say, "Daddy, can I get this bag of chips?" I'm never gonna get to hear my nieces say, "Gunkle, can I get a nana? Gunkle, you going to work? Gunkle, are you okay?" I'm never gonna hear that again. This right here, I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to act because I've lost 8 parts of me.
This is not a Shreveport morning. This is a nation morning.
Today, the funerals were held for the 8 children who were shot and killed in Shreveport, Louisiana on April 20th. Good evening, Southeast Texas. Thanks for joining us. I'm Cameron Burchett. Ebony has the weekend off. Today, families, friends, and loved ones gathered for a funeral service to remember the 8 children who were killed in what police called a domestic disturbance. Authorities in Louisiana identified the shooter as Shamar Elkins. You may remember police say 7 of the children were his own. The children killed included 7 siblings and a cousin. Among those were 3 boys and 5 girls who ranged in age from 3 to 11 years old. Mayor of Shreveport, Tom Arsenault, spoke at the funeral and shared this message.
Children whose laughter once danced freely through homes, classrooms, and playgrounds. And whereas our precious angels were sons and daughters, grandchildren, classmates, and friends, their presence was a gift, gentle, vibrant, and full of promise.
The gunman led police on a chase into a neighboring parish and was fatally shot by officers.
It's important for me to be out here because I'm supporting my sister and my nieces and nephews. This is a really tragic situation for my family right now. So I just ask everyone to please support us in prayers and give us all the support that you can.
3 women walked into that church dressed in white. Not black, white. Because somebody in that family made a decision. These children were full of life. They loved music and dancing and TikTok videos and cartoons. They had nicknames that only the people who loved them used. And so the people who loved them decided, we are not coming to mourn today. We are coming to celebrate. But then the doors opened, and there they were, 8 white caskets stretched in a row across the front of that sanctuary, each one with a large photo of a child standing right next to it. Gold crowns on top, white flowers on top, and the whole room went quiet. This is the story of what happened in Shreveport, Louisiana on the 9th of May, 2026. The day an entire city and people who drove more than 12 hours from states they had never been showed up to say goodbye to 8 children they will never forget. Children now known to the world as the Eternal 8. And if you do not yet know who these children were, or what happened to them, stay right here, because before this video is over, you will know every single one of them by name, not just as victims. As people, welcome to Justice Rewritten. Subscribe. If you are new here, we cover every case with verified facts and zero filler. And drop a comment, tell us where in the world you are watching from tonight. Before we talk about that church, before we talk about those caskets, you need to know who these children actually were. Because the news covered the crime. We are covering the kids. The 8 children killed on the 19th of April 2026 in Shreveport's Cedar Grove neighborhood were 7 siblings and 1 cousin. Their fathers were the same man. Their mothers were 2 different women, Shaniqua Pugh and Christina Snow. The cousin, Marcaden, was the son of Keosha Pugh, Shaniqua's sister. 7 siblings, 1 cousin, all under the same roof on a Saturday night. The funeral program, the one handed to every single person who walked through those church doors, read like a yearbook for children who never got to finish elementary school. And inside that program, each child had a tribute written by the people who loved them most. Jayla Elkins was 3 years old. Her family called her J-Bay. She was the youngest. She loved unicorns and spent her days running around the house making noise with her sisters. Shayla Elkins was 5, quieter than the rest, more reserved. She liked scrolling on her phone and doing her own thing, but she was always right there in the middle of whatever her sisters were doing. Braylon Snow was 5, son of Christina Snow. His great-aunt LaShun Berry confirmed he was excited about summer camp, where he and his siblings had plans to learn a new trade and take classes together. Gedarion Snow was 6, also Christina's son. The funeral program described him as having a sweet and loving heart, and then it said something that stopped people cold. Though his life on earth was short, his light was mighty. Kayla Pugh was 6. Her family called her K-May. She wore a white dress to her own funeral with her fingernails painted pink. One woman in that church lined up to pay her respects, looked down at Kayla in that casket and had to shut her eyes. She could not hold it together. Layla Pugh was 7. The funeral program called her bright, intelligent, bold, and full of love. She made TikTok videos with her siblings. She and Kayla were inseparable, the 2 older sisters who took pride in keeping the house tidy, who would respond, "Okay, Uncle," whenever Troy Brown asked them to clean up. Marcaden Pugh was 10. His nickname was K-Bug. He was Keosha's son, Shaniqua's nephew, and the cousin to all 7 of the other children. His father, Troy Brown, sat in that church on Saturday and said, "These were 8 babies. 8 precious babies. So, no, I'm not okay." Soraya Snow was 11, the oldest of the 8. Christina Snow, her mother, bent down at her casket and whispered something in her daughter's ear as the 11-year-old lay there, eyes closed, as if she were simply asleep. What she said in that moment, only the 2 of them will ever know. These were not statistics. These were real children, with real nicknames, real plans for summer, and real people who loved them. And on Saturday, the 9th of May, 2026, the morning before Mother's Day, Shreveport said goodbye to all 8 of them at once. Visitation was held the day before Friday, May 8th, from 1 to 8 p.m. at Precious Memories Mortuary on Greenwood Road. Then on Saturday, May 9th, at 11 a.m., the funeral service officially began at Summer Grove Baptist Church on Joella Avenue in Shreveport. Hundreds of people poured in: family, friends, first responders, city officials, state officials, and then strangers. People who drove more than 12 hours from other states just to stand in that building and bear witness. People who had never met these children a single day in their lives and still felt like they had to be there. 8 white caskets lined the sanctuary. Photographs of each child were displayed beside them at the front. Gold crowns and white flowers sat on top of every single one. The colors in the room told you everything about who made the decisions for this day. The family chose white, pink, blue, and purple, bright colors, because these were children, and bright colors were what they deserved. The 3 mothers, Shaniqua Pugh, Christina Snow, and Keosha Pugh, sat side by side in the front row, all dressed in white. Shaniqua, still recovering from multiple gunshot wounds. Christina, who had called 911 from her kitchen floor after being shot 9 times. And Keosha, who walked into that funeral leaning on a cane, still recovering from injuries she got when she jumped from the roof of that house to save herself and her daughter while calling 911 inches the dark. 3 mothers, 8 children, 1 morning before Mother's Day. Subscribe to Justice Rewritten right now. This is the kind of coverage nobody else is giving this case, verified, detailed, and built around the people involved, not just the crime. The service ran for about 2 hours, and it was not a quiet, somber ceremony. It was a homegoing. There was a choir. There were individual singers. There were hands in the air and people standing up from the pews. There was grief, real, raw grief, but there was also something else in that room. Something the family had decided was going to be there, whether the circumstances allowed it or not. Gospel singer Kim Burrell performed. Her voice lifted the room. People rose from their seats. Hands went up across the sanctuary. And then she stopped singing and she spoke directly to the families sitting in that front row. She looked at the mothers. She looked at the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles, and she answered the question that was hanging over every single person in that building. To ask the question, why is this fair, God? How could you, Lord? He's still God, Burrell said. The same God that healed you from the stuff that you don't want to tell nobody about. But he is a God that doesn't have to give us all the clues. Just know that he makes no mistakes. Then she turned to the families and said simply, God's got you. To the family, to the parents, to the aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, God's got you. Bishop Joseph Hall Jr. addressed the confusion and the grief and the questions that nobody in that room could answer. I know you said, like me, this should not have happened. We should not be in this place at this point in time, he said quietly. But I heard somebody say, God is still in control. The room erupted in applause. Bishop Bernard Kimball, senior pastor of Mount Olive Baptist Church, opened the service with words that set the tone for everything that followed. In spite of how you may be feeling today, we still need to know that God is still good. Pastor Al George prayed specifically for the two schools these children attended, Summer Grove School and Linwood Public Charter School. They're going to school and see empty desks, he said. Lord God, they need you right now. Teachers who taught these children were in that room, classmates who sat next to them, people who are going to walk into a classroom this week and feel those empty seats. Gospel recording artist Charisma Evans also performed, honoring the children through song. Then came the elected officials. Mayor Tom Arsenault stepped to the podium and said, Our precious angels were sons and daughters, grandchildren, classmates, and friends. And then he said something that went further. May we honor them by carrying forward the gentleness, joy, and love they so freely shared. Councilwoman Tabitha Taylor told the room, There are no words sufficient to ease this pain. And then she made a promise. The Eternal Eight will never, ever be forgotten in the city of Shreveport. Councilman James Green told the audience to take off their funeral faces because this was a celebration of 8 lives, and the people in that church stood up and clapped. Then Congressman Cleo Fields stepped to the podium, and he said 11 words that summed up everything. This is not a Shreveport morning. This is a nation morning. He was right, because sitting in that church was someone who drove from Arizona to be there. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who herself was shot and permanently injured in a mass shooting assassination attempt in 2011 and has spent every year since advocating against gun violence, came to Shreveport, specifically for this funeral. She did not have to be there. She chose to be there. Louisiana State Senator Sam Jenkins read aloud the executive order issued by Governor Jeff Landry ordering that U.S. and Louisiana state flags would fly at half-staff for the next 8 days as a solemn tribute to these children. And Governor Landry's message, read aloud in that church, said this: The children were the light of their homes and the heart of their classrooms. They were full of promise and found joy in the simplest things, such as dancing, playing outside, and sharing laughter with family and friends. Their futures were bright and held great promise. One relative, Irene Washington, stood outside after the service and said something that stayed with people. With the kids being kids, there's a lot of innocence in them, she said, even though it was tragic when they left. It's a celebration that we know where they are, and they didn't have to go through a lot of troubles in this world. When the service ended, Bishop Kimball closed with a prayer. Help us as we move from this spot, he said, because we know, O God, grief is only temporary, and if we'll put our hands in your favor, you'll lead us through this. Then the doors opened. Outside the church, horse-drawn carriages were waiting, 8 of them, 1 for each child. The small white caskets, each topped with roses, were loaded onto those carriages and carried through the streets of Shreveport to Forest Park Cemetery West. People lined the streets. Buses transported the hundreds of mourners who could not walk the distance. And when those carriages arrived at the cemetery and the caskets were brought to the burial site, doves were released into the Louisiana sky. 8 doves, 8 children, rising. The families chose to hold the burial itself privately, which means that final moment, that final goodbye at the graveside, belonged only to the people who loved these children most. No cameras, no officials, just family. And Shaniqua Pugh, who lost all 4 of her children on April 19th, stood at that cemetery and held a single rose. That image right there, a mother holding a rose at the graves of 4 of her children the morning before Mother's Day, is one of the most quietly devastating things to come out of this entire case. Now, if you are watching this video and you are just hearing about this case for the first time, here is what you need to know about what actually happened on April 19th. Shamar Elkins, 31 years old, shot and killed all 8 of these children in the early hours of that Sunday morning at 2 homes in Cedar Grove, Shreveport. 7 of the 8 were his own biological children. The 8th was his nephew, Marcaden. He also shot his wife, Shaniqua Pugh, multiple times and shot his ex-wife, Christina Snow, 9 times at her front door before driving the children back to the house on West 79th Street. He had a 2019 felony weapons conviction that legally barred him from owning any firearm until 2029. The weapon he used, a Mossberg assault-style pistol, was traced by the ATF to a 5-6-year-old convicted felon named Charles Ford, who admitted it was stolen from his truck by Elkins at least 5 weeks before the shooting. Ford has been federally charged. A second man, Michael Mayance, the person Elkins fled to after the shooting, has also been federally charged for illegally possessing firearms while under a domestic violence protection order. Elkins died in Bossier City after a police pursuit. Whether he was shot by police or took his own life is still officially under investigation. The divorce court date was set for the morning after the shooting, April 20th. 3 years before that, he had threatened to kill his wife and children if she ever tried to leave. That threat was never reported to any authority. The investigations are ongoing. The federal cases against Ford and Mayance are moving through the courts, and 4 active investigations remain open as of today. If you want every update on this case as it develops, subscribe to Justice Rewritten and turn on notifications. We are the only channel covering this case at this level of depth. There is something about watching a community come together the way Shreveport did on Saturday that makes you feel 2 things at the exact same time. You feel the grief. Of course you do. 8 white caskets in a row. 3 mothers in white. A grandmother and aunts and uncles and teachers and classmates and strangers who drove 12 hours just to stand in a room and say, "These children mattered. We see you. We are here." But you also feel something else, a refusal. A refusal to let these 8 children be reduced to a crime statistic. A refusal to let their story end with what happened to them rather than who they were. J-Bay, the quiet one on her phone. The boy with a sweet and loving heart. K-May, with her fingernails painted pink. K-Bug, the bold one who made TikTok videos. The boy who was looking forward to summer camp. And the 11-year-old whose mother leaned down and whispered something in her ear one last time. The eternal 8. They are not forgotten. Not in Shreveport. Not in that church. Not on this channel. If this video meant something to you, share it. Because the more people who know these children's names, the better. Comment below and tell us where you are watching from. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Because the federal cases connected to this shooting are still developing, and when new information comes out, Justice Rewritten will be the first place covering it in full. Rest well, Eternal Otto.